Hello there. Welcome to this edition of the CRCast, a bi-monthly webcast on community relations and Jewish advocacy issues. I'm really delighted. This is David Bernstein, President and CEO of JCPA, and I'm super delighted to have as our special guest Tilly Shamus, who is the Executive Director of the Hillel of Michigan. Tilly is one of these professional leaders in the Hillel that everybody knows. In Hillel, she's a thought leader and somebody I've gotten to know and whose work I greatly respect, and have visited University of Michigan Hillel a number of times and have worked with them and have been very impressed with the dynamism of the campus and Tilly's leadership. So Tilly, thank you for being with us. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having us. And I remember when you invited me, I said, it was about a month ago, and I said, well, we'll be on the other side of a divestment resolution and all kinds of things. So I'm sure that we will have something to talk about, and here we are.
Yeah, I should state that we did not actually ask you this because we anticipated a BDS resolution coming your way. We asked you because we knew that Michigan was a dynamic Jewish community with several thousand, you'll tell us a little bit more, Jewish students, one of the places that a lot of parents want to send their kids and a lot of kids want to go to, and we thought it also is a complex place. It's a big university with where you can hide, where you can be part of social justice movements if you want to, and you would be able to kind of give us a sense of what the campus was writ large. So glad to have you here, and maybe, I think it would be remiss if we didn't start with the BDS resolution and what just happened. And I've watched in Michigan and the various resolutions that have come forward which have failed in the past. Why now? Why did this pass now?
Well, first of all, we are still the vibrant Jewish life. We're going to get to all of those things. But I've always said that campus really is a microcosm of all the trends that we're seeing, whether it's about American Jewish life and engagements or whether it's about national politics. And I think that this particular BDS votes and our campus climate today, they really are reflections of our national political climate. And so this country is experiencing a rise in extremes, a rise in political incivility, a rise in identity politics, and we have a lot more across the board of the with us or against us mentality on the far left and on the far right. It's making it much more challenging for people to just accept that things are complicated and nuanced and not so black and white, and certainly the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is just about as nuanced and complicated and gray as it comes. So when we overlay that onto our campus climate today, where we have seen over the last year and a half a rise in racist incidents, racist graffiti, anti-Semitic graffiti as well, chalking against minorities on campus, it's heavily impacted our minority students. And so last spring, during the student election, we saw that there was a much more progressive and activist agenda that was being put forward by one of the political parties that was running for student government. And they were focused very much so on race, diversity, and identity, rightfully so. They were feeling as if their issues were not being heard, that they were being silenced by university administration, that their concerns were being silenced on campus, that their concerns were not being heard in this country today. And so with that particular party really won all of the seats in student government on this particular agenda, even though they had said that the divestment was not a part of their agenda specifically. So when the student government representatives are told now that here we are, we come up to a vote on divestment, and this is a vote to uplift those voices of the marginalized students on campus, in particular in this present campus climate, it's really difficult for student government representatives to say no. For them to say, no, it's much more complicated than that, there's another side to this issue. They really want to be able to be responsive to that issue of the marginalized student and the marginalized voice on campus. So even though our efforts related to this BDS resolution, they were as strong, if not stronger than ever. The speeches were excellent. The educational resources we provided were very similar to last year, if not more so. The outreach to student government representatives was excellent. We had a petition that was signed by over 1,800 students and 5,000 alumni, parents, and community members. That was more than last year. Articles in the campus paper, all of those things that we have done to defeat this resolution 10 previous times, that this time, because of campus climate, it just wasn't enough to overcome this desire by the student government to be responsive to the students who were putting forward a marginalized voice on campus. So we can talk more about the specifics, but that really it came down to campus climate.
I had heard, and this concerns some, that it was a Latino organization that actually put forward the resolution. Is that true? And what does that mean for you? Okay.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a Latino organization, but you're getting on the exact points around campus climate. So there were, of the 7 speakers that were able to speak for the resolution and against the resolution, we had diverse students, and they had diverse students. And of the 7 speakers that voted, that were speaking for the resolution, one of them represented Latino students on campus and talked about an incident that they had around racist graffiti, which actually Hillel students were the ones that went out to the Rock to paint over it immediately. But they talked about an incident that they had, and they said that it was really important for them to be in solidarity with Palestinian students on this issue. Another of those 7 was the student who, probably about 6 weeks ago, is a student who decided to take a knee on the diag, very similar to the football players taking a knee on the diag, and he took a knee for 24 hours in protest. And he stood up there, and in a very heartfelt sign of allyship and allyhood, he admittedly said he knows nothing about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but he wanted to show his support to another marginalized group on campus. And unfortunately, 2 others of those 7 speakers were Jewish students who were speaking from the far left, using very extreme language, and also being in support of this resolution, and in many ways giving cover for a resolution like this to pass. So those speakers did speak, but it was not brought forward by the Latino student group.
Mm-hmm. So how has this affected Jewish students on campus?
You know, I'll tell you, their really initial reaction was they were sad. We were in the room 3:30 in the morning. I would say probably about 120, 150 of our students who were against the resolution were still in the room at that time. And there were a lot of tears. We gathered around. There were a lot of hugs. I felt like it was a little bit of a Bo Schembechler coach kind of moment where I stood up on the chairs and just thanked everybody for being there for one another, reminded them that they did everything that they possibly could, reminded them to continue to be there for one another, and that they were going to be okay. Since then, I think that the students shifted from sadness to anger, and they're hurt. They're hurt about the proceedings themselves. They found that there were elements of it that felt unfair, as typically comes up. They're angry about a particular silencing of a professor who teaches Arab-Israeli conflict, and they're angry about how Jewish students putting forward that there were elements of this resolution that felt anti-Semitic to them were dismissed or explained away, and there's no other minority group who has that experience on campus where they can say that we feel that this is discriminatory towards us, and somebody could say, no, it's not racist, or it's not sexist, or it's not intended in that way, and then it would just be excused. And so they're struggling with that, and struggling with how being pro-Israel is depicted on campus. But I saw in the days after that our students were really resilient. Within the next night, they led an educational program that they had in the books before about Israel and the peace process, and a lot more people came to that. We led a dialogue program 2 days later for a real diverse group of students to be able to come together and talk about how they were feeling. We organized to have a very broad cross-section of students talk about next steps post-resolution, and they probably had a 3 or 4 hour meeting well into the night to talk about what they were going to do next. And we also organized a follow-up discussion with administration, with the Dean of Students, with the VP of Student Life, so that our students could express how they were feeling to university administration as well. So they're still doing this. They're going to be speaking tomorrow night at the student government meeting. They're putting so many articles in the student paper that the student paper won't print them anymore, so they're taking them to medium.com and other news outlets to get them to be printed, and they're still putting their voice forward.
Mm-hmm. So students obviously are not the only stakeholders of a campus, and not even of a Hillel, right? You have alum. Yeah. I know personally, I was at a gathering of Jewish leadership and spoke to several prominent alum that day who happened to be in the vicinity, who were really concerned and worried about their alma mater and what it meant for Jewish students and what it meant for Jewish life on campus. How have you managed that?
Well, we've heard from a lot of people. Hundreds and hundreds of people have reached out to us. We actually, I would say the vast majority of people who are reaching out to us in a really positive way, showing their support for our students, showing appreciation for Hillel for being here for our students. And, you know, as much as our primary focus is the students and how they're navigating all of this, I see our community as much broader than just our students, and I felt it was important all the way throughout for us to be keeping our parents and alumni and our concerned community, keeping them informed, keeping them engaged, and making sure that they felt like they had an outlet as well. So even last week we sent out an email to our broader community to thank them for all of their support and to give them a vehicle through a form so that they can share their notes of encouragement with our student leaders who weren't hearing from them directly. And I think within 24 hours we had over 150 submissions of parents and alumni and community who just wanted to show support for students. And a bunch of local community just showed up on the Friday night right after the resolution, just because they wanted to be with our student community, which was really nice.
Very nice, very nice. So how do you, these types of events can sort of go way out of proportion to what the larger campus atmosphere. We know campuses are complex places, and these events don't speak to the entirety of the campus experience or the Jewish experience by any means. How do you make sure that Michigan both remains a hospitable environment to Jewish students and is perceived as a hospitable environment to Jewish students?
Right. Okay. So let's be clear. This is still Michigan, and it is much more than just a hospitable environment for Jewish students. It's, as we say, it's great to be a Jewish Michigan Wolverine. In immediate, we're here to make sure that all of the programs that we have running for students on a regular basis, that they're still running, that we're still offering all of the same things to have that vibrant Jewish life that we're known for on our campus. So this week we're going to have our Shaboom, our Shabbat across University of Michigan. We're going to reach probably close to 1,500 students in 70 different Shabbat dinners all across campus. So we want to make sure that we are not losing sight of our mission and all of our students and all that we do on a regular basis, and make sure that the rest of our programs are not impacted by this at all. We've got a great staff team and great student leaders who are really staying focused. And long term, actually, our staff was already working on bringing in an expert, a trainer, to work with our Jewish students on identifying and navigating contemporary anti-Semitism, and that's scheduled for January. And we want to address this situation that we're in right now and not just bring that educator to Jewish students, but bring that educator to university administration, who admittedly recognize that They know anti-Semitism when they hear about a swastika on campus. They're not trained in contemporary anti-Semitism and how to identify it. And we're also working with the leadership of student government, the executive, to help them understand what were some of the undertones of anti-Semitism that existed over the last couple of weeks during this debate, and encourage their own student government representatives to go through some of this training as well, so that they can self-identify some of the contemporary anti-Semitism that was in student government during this debate. And in the short term, it's not over yet. Tonight there's a student government meeting, and we have a lot of students who want to be speaking there and want to continue to be heard. The student body president has already said that when she brings forward the resolution to the Board of Regents, that she is not going to mention any criticism of Israel. So we want to see how that will be presented by the student government. And the Regents and University Administration has already made it clear that they are not going to accept the resolution's suggestion to investigate their investments related to Israel. So we're waiting to hear what the response is from university leadership once this resolution goes up to the Board of Regents. So I think collectively between the Regents and administration and student government leadership and our own Jewish leadership, we need to reinforce this message that our campus will not be hijacked by these extreme politics, and we're the leaders and best. We'll just make sure that we continue to lead one of the best forms of Jewish life on campus that there is out there.
Right. Have you felt support from the university administration, president, and others?
Yes, yes. From the moment when, first of all, the Dean of Students was there until 3:30 in the morning with us. When we reached out to the Dean of Students and VP of Student Life to say that we wanted them to come and hear from our community, they came and they were here in that week. We had a good 2-hour session, private session. We asked the media not to be in the room, and they did not want to be on record. They wanted to create a space where our students could say whatever they wanted to say and not feel that they had to hold back because the Michigan Daily was in the room. We've already had a meeting with President Schlissel to talk about the impact on our community, and we've heard from several of the regents who are concerned about this and waiting to see what is going to be presented at the next Board of Regents meeting as well.
Excellent. So we still have a few more minutes, and I really wanted to touch upon another issue, which is a term that I became familiar with recently, PEP, Progressive Accept Palestine. The two of us have actually talked about this, about Jewish students feeling excluded from social justice movements on their campus. How much of a reality is that today? And
I think that this is a really hard issue for our progressive Jewish students. And let's remember, most of our Jewish students are pretty liberal. And again, it's this feeling of you're either with us or against us. And so on the far left, on the extreme left, there's really this sense of you have to be with us on all of these issues, including Palestine, and you can't be with us at all. And so we are working with students who struggle with that. And these are students who have criticism of Israel, who may be critical and outwardly critical, and there are spaces for them to do that. But they're not critical to the point where they think that Israel should be singled out and divested from in the way that is happening in the extreme far left. And so they're struggling when this comes up in the other environments. So we advise our students in a couple of different ways. First of all, we always encourage them to really sit with their discomfort. These are really important environments for our students to be in, and they're there because they're driven by social justice values. And so we want them to, if that's an environment they want to be in, we don't want them to leave it because of this issue. We want them to be in relationship with those organizations and find a voice within them, because if they stay in it and they're really in relationship with those who are driving these movements, then they're going to find those moments where they can bring their voice into the conversation, and they can say, hey, that's crossing a line for me, and I'm here and I'm in it with you. But when you talk about Jewish power, or you talk about Jewish donors, or you single out Israel in the way that you are in this disproportionate way, this is how it lands on me as a Jewish student. And they can't engage in those ways if they're not in the room. So we do want them to be in the room. And then also, it's important for us at Hillel that we're in relationship with a lot of the groups that may sign on to a solidarity statement around this particular issue. I mean, it's important to us that throughout the year we're doing work with the Black Student Union, and that we are ensuring that our students are developing relationships with one another around Black-Jewish relations, just because that's important to us, so that they know each other's issues. So even if we do a weekend...
Students receptive? Are some of the progressive students receptive to the outreach from Jewish students?
Yes. I mean, for the last 2 years, we've done a weekend with Hillel McCoy, a Black Jewish educator and activist who has done really powerful workshops with our Jewish community and Black community together. And even if the entire weekend goes by without mention of Israel, it's important that the students are building relationships with one another, so that when BDS comes up again, they can talk about it, and they're talking with a friend. There were even people who were involved as authors of this resolution who had been in dialogue with our students throughout the year through Muslim-Jewish dialogue, through dialogue that some of our students had created after last year's divestment, so that they could at least talk to each other outside of these moments of tension. This is a university environment, after all, and it's really important that we push past this idea of anti-normalization, that I can't speak to you because you're a pro-Israel organization. We're still going to be an organization that's in support of Israel, and our students really need to be engaged and in conversation with one another. But the last thing that I'll say is that through these moments, we also have students who decide that it's too hard for them in these social justice communities, or that their student government representatives who for the first time are being forced to think about their Jewishness, and they see Hillel as a resource to be able to bring their social justice values and to do so through a Jewish lens. So some students have really dropped out of some of these communities, but found their social justice home in Hillel, have gone on to avodah or volunteering in Israel for a year after, because they see new opportunities for themselves to engage in social justice through the Jewish community.
Right. Tension, by the way, doesn't always make one flee your identity. It can actually strengthen your identity as well.
Right, right.
I guess I want to end on a more with one last positive question. You know, campus life is clearly not just about Israel and Israel advocacy and all the rest, even if it's in the popular Jewish imagination. You've been at this work for a while, not just at the University of Michigan, but elsewhere. What is working in terms of engaging Jewish students and getting them to care about being Jewish and to live a Jewish life?
Look, I think it's the same question around some of the Israel stuff and others, is that I think one of the reasons why Hillel really works is because we take this approach of both hugging and pushing at the same time. And I think that that's what our students need right now. When they come to university, they want an environment where they're going to find that welcoming space, where they find others like themselves, whether it's in difficult weeks like the last few that we've had, or whether it's that first Friday night or first Rosh Hashanah, and they want to feel that sense of comfort, that sense of community. So they want to be in environments where they can get a hug and see other people like themselves and feel that sense of comfort. But I think also what's most important is that we're not telling our students to hide out in Hillel because this is a safe space. We're actually really pushing them. And we're pushing them to think about who they want to be as Jews today, who they want to be as Jewish leaders today, and encouraging them to think about how they're going to create that for themselves. So whether that's like the Shabbat dinners that are coming up this week, rather than just come to Hillel for Shabbat dinner on a weekly basis, we're pushing our students to think about what's the sort of environments that you want to be able to create for yourself and for your peers for a Shabbat experience. And as much as I love having 300, 350 students here every Friday night, I know that when we have 70 different dinners around campus and those students for the first time are thinking about how do I make my grandmother's chicken soup, or how do I cook kugel and chicken at the same time, that they're building that knowledge and confidence of creating a Jewish life for themselves and their peers. Same for the divestment resolution. They are navigating some of the most complex challenges that are facing us in the Jewish world today, and they're doing so with nuance and complexity and empathy and a real strong, confident voice in what they believe in. And so I believe that what we're doing is we're creating both that sense of community, but also the leadership skills and that desire to be Jewish and to bring their Jewishness out into the world in a way that's meaningful to them. And it's why not only are we successful now, but we're successful at populating the American Jewish landscape with leaders, whether they're professional leaders or lay leaders or people who are inviting, a dozen friends over to their house for Shabbat dinner when they go off and move to New York. That's what we're trying to create in the Jewish world.
Fantastic. Well, really appreciate it. I know you've been through a lot in the last few weeks. We appreciate you taking the time out of that schedule and all the calls that you've had to field to have a discussion with us. Keep up the good work. We're here for you, and we really appreciate all you do.
Thank you. And really, we've felt the love over the last couple of weeks. So thank you for your support, David. Thanks to everybody else out there. And all I can say is go blue.
I'm an Ohio State fan. What can I say?
I'm sorry. Had to do it. You won this weekend. I had to close on go blue.
Yeah, it's okay.
Thanks.
So thanks, everybody, for participating, and we'll give you news shortly about the next CRCast. Have a good day.
Thanks, David.